Welcome to College Smart Radio, helping you understand the true cost of college and tackle the runaway costs of financing a college education. College Smart Radio is hosted by Mark Guthrie and Beatrice Schultz, founders of Westface College Planning. Now, your hosts for College Smart Radio, Mark Guthrie and Beatrice Schultz.
Should you spend money to prepare for the SAT and ACT? Will your score improve? Will the higher score make a difference in your chance for admittance and scholarships? Our guest on today's College Smart Radio program is Shawn O'Connor, the founder and president of Stratus Prep. Shawn's joining us today to talk about the importance of standardized testing results and what you can do to improve your results. Hi, I'm Beatrice Schultz. I'm here in the studio on my own today. Mark isn't able to join us, but welcome to our radio show, College Smart Radio, where we help you tackle the runaway costs of a college education. Our show is about bringing up-to-date and practical advice to parents who are dealing with the cost of a college education for their kids. With some private schools costing well over $60,000 a year, a UC costing $35,000, and a California State University running $25,000, parents need more help than ever. We bring you that help by sharing our expertise as college planning practitioners and by sharing the expertise of our distinguished guests who are thought leaders in the higher education arena. I'm a certified financial planner, and Mark and I are the owners of the San Carlos-based college financial planning business, Westface College Planning. We also help parents with their investment and retirement plans through Westface Financial Advisory, our registered investment advisory firm. And in addition to our radio show, you can find lots of powerful information at our website, collegesmartradio.com. We have articles with up-to-date information on navigating the turbulent waters of college planning, links to our free community workshops and webinars, which teach parents and students how to efficiently pay for college, and you can sign up for our monthly e-newsletter, which is full of useful content. So let's get into today's show. Our guest on today's show is Shawn O'Connor. He's the founder and president of Stratus Prep. And with a decade of experience in test prep and admissions consulting, Shawn has helped thousands of applicants achieve admission to their top college choice, business school and law school, many with full scholarships at schools, including Wharton and MIT. Last year, Shawn and the Stratus Prep team worked with applicants in 32 countries and 39 states. Shawn writes about MBA admissions for Forbes, law school admissions for U.S. News and World Report, and travels across the U.S. and around the world speaking at the world's top universities and leading corporations about how to get into these top schools. So we're thrilled to have Shawn on College Smart Radio today. Shawn, thanks for joining us.
Thank you, Beatrice. It's great to be with you.
So how did you get into this business before we get started?
Yeah, absolutely. So I started Stratus Prep in 2006, and I was just coming out of my JD MBA program at Harvard and trying to think about, what type of entrepreneurial endeavor I would be best suited to start. And I had always, weirdly loved standardized tests and was the person that everybody would come to go over their essays and give them feedback. So I thought maybe I could make a business out of that and started at my kitchen table in New York City. And today, as you said, we serve folks in more than 32 countries and 39 states. So it's been an exciting ride over the last almost 10 years now.
So share with the audience your observations on the national trends in standardized testing, or either that have changed over the last 10 years or what's going on today.
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
Specific to undergrad right now at this point, SAT, ACT.
Sure. So both the SAT and the ACT are going to be undergoing important changes in 2015 and 2016. So with the SAT, they are trying to make it a more practical exam. You might have remembered when you were preparing for the SAT, memorizing all of these esoteric vocab words that you never would actually use in practice. And they're sort of dispensing with that and trying to use vocab that is more part of the common vernacular and testing that. With the math, they're trying to do more linear equations and other types of calculations that are really common in everyday life. Pretty substantial changes in the content there. They're also changing the writing section pretty dramatically. And then the ACT is moving to a model that combines a, paper test, but then also the option of a computerized adaptive test. And while all the details haven't been released yet, it looks like there are going to be sort of spatial math problems where you have to, sort of combine different beakers of information or beakers of substances and sort of predict what will happen. And And that points to one of the big differences even today between the SAT and the ACT, which is that the SAT is just math and verbal, whereas the ACT also includes a science component, hence the beakers. And when parents come to us, one of their first questions typically is, which test should my child take? And if the child really excels in science, the ACT does tend to be the better test. Otherwise, the SAT tends to be the better test. And it's so interesting. Nationwide, it's almost a 50-50 split, and just about every school will accept either test.
So why are there two different tests? What's the history of that?
Yeah, I mean, just two different private organizations that develop the tests. The schools have found value in both of them. And so, they continue to, quote unquote, compete, although perhaps that's not exactly the right word, for students.
Well, like you said, most colleges will accept either or. So how important are they? And do all colleges require some type of standardized test out of the SAT or the ACT?
Yeah, so that's a really interesting question. And in fact, there's a website that your listeners would be really interested in checking out called fairtest.org, just FAIR test.org, which lists all the schools that do not require one of these standardized tests. And it is a huge number. I think it's up to about 800 now. And there are some pretty high-ranked schools on there like Bowdoin, Smith, Brandeis, three of the leading liberal arts schools in the nation. It tends to be a lot of smaller liberal arts schools and then lower ranked schools that are open to, not requiring the SAT and the ACT. Larger state schools typically will require it because with such a voluminous number of applications, it's a way to quickly sort through students from very different high schools. But more and more, there is a trend to schools either making it optional or not required at all.
And why is that?
I think that there are some, concerns about bias in the tests, and definitely when you look at the statistics of the performance of Caucasian students versus African American and Latino students, the results are certainly not equal, and perhaps that can be attributed to socioeconomic factors or preparation, but I think that does raise serious questions and concerns, and so for that reason, a number of schools have moved away from these as a primary determinant of admissions, but at the schools that still use them, which is the vast majority of the top schools that we would think of, they remain a very, very important factor. And the goal of some of the tests have been some of the test changes that will be coming out in 2015 and 2016 is to align them more with what students learn in the classroom and the Common Core, which will sort of dictate what students all across the nation learn at each grade level. But there is still going to be an immense need for preparation because, unfortunately, what you may learn in one classroom versus another classroom is not identical, and of course, private schools may not be following the Common Core. So there still will be preparation, but it will be a little bit different with these changes in the test. And these tests, they change regularly. Once about every 10 years, we see an evolution and a change to the test. Usually, there's the same sort of eventual results, which is some concerns about inequality, and so then they try to correct them, and it's a constant back and forth.
Let's talk a little bit about the preparation, or how important is early preparation, or when should students be prepping, and maybe we can even talk about do you take the test first and then prep, or should you prep before you take the test, and how many times should you take it? A lot of questions there.
Yeah, absolutely. So, we strongly recommend that students prep before taking the test. With, for example, the SAT, you only have to report one score, and you can even mix and match different sections to report your best possible score. But what we find is that students really suffer from anxiety if they take the test and really don't do well. And then sometimes they get this misconception that they can't do well on the test when, had they prepared first and done a bunch of practice tests, and had they learned some of the strategies of how the tests are designed, they would have done much better from the outset. So it really makes sense. There are tons of practice tests available out there. You can go to, Amazon or your local bookstore, and you can buy a book of, 10 real LSATs, 10 real SATs. And so just go ahead and have, if you're trying to decide if your son or daughter needs prep, just go ahead and have them take one of those practice tests. You can administer it at home, but don't send them in there for the real test without proper preparation, because the vast majority of students, benefit a tremendous amount, 200, 300, 400 points on the SAT, which is enormous, from their prep. We had a student who was really struggling and was in sort of the mid-teens, like 1,500, 1,600 on the SAT. And after we helped him, he's now well over 2,000 points. So, that just dramatically changes the schools that are going to be options for him. And, his parents are incredibly grateful. And, that's, something that I think is just one illustration of the power of preparation and why it makes sense to, invest in this. And SAT and ACT prep, with my firm, Stratus Prep, or, with other firms, it's not terribly expensive when you consider the overall cost of a college education. What you have to be careful of is, making sure you find a really qualified provider. There are a lot of people who just sort of, stick a shingle out there, or some big national companies where the teachers they have may not be quite as qualified as you would think, and that can raise some serious concerns. But if you can find a good prep program, and, today's students are so open to online test prep. I mean, we do about 70 to 80% of our prep online, and it's just so much easier. The parents don't have to drive the students somewhere. They can work it around every student's crazy schedule, and it really is the way of the future.
So when we think about prepping for the standardized tests, when should the student start thinking about prepping, and when should they take the test or preparing themselves for it or reviewing for it?
Absolutely. So we really recommend that students should start preparing in sophomore year. Take the test ideally for the first and hopefully only time during junior year. And then if need be, they can retake it once in the fall of senior year. But we try to do that as a worst case option, because nearly every student is going to want to apply early decision or early action to the school of their choice. And so because of that, we really want to facilitate the summer and fall of senior year to be dedicated just to wrapping up those applications and recommendations and getting that early decision or early application submitted. So in an ideal world, sophomore year into junior year is prep, take the test, sort of spring of junior year, and then have that option to retake if need be in senior year.
If you've just joined us, our guest on today's College Smart Radio program is Shawn O'Connor, who's the founder and CEO of Stratus Prep. We're talking about standardized testing, and we'll be right back on College Smart Radio.
College Smart Radio with Mark Guthrie and Beatrice Schultz continues in moments on AM 1220 KDOW. For more information on today's topic, visit collegesmartradio.com or call area code 650-587-1559. Contact our hosts at collegesmartradio.com or call 650-587-1559. Now back to College Smart Radio with Mark Guthrie and Beatrice Schultz on AM 1220 KDOW.
Welcome back to College Smart Radio, where we help you tackle the runaway costs of college. I'm Beatrice Schultz. We all know that college is expensive and will most likely be some of the most costly years for a family. Understanding how to navigate the college costs is a smart thing to know. To help families be on this radio show, we host community workshops live and via webinar several times a month that explain the costs of various colleges, how the financial aid system works, and things to consider to prepare yourself for this tremendous expense. To learn more and reserve your seat, go to my website at collegesmartradio.com. If you've just joined us, we've been talking with our guest, Shawn O'Connor, who's the founder and CEO of Stratus Prep, which is a test prep and admissions consulting company. Earlier in the first half of the show, Shawn mentioned that there are colleges that do not ask for standardized testing, and if you want to find out what colleges those include, you can go to fairtest.org, and a link to that website is on our College Smart Radio website, and also a link to stratusprep.com, which is the website, Shawn's website. Shawn, before I cut you off, you were talking about the timing of when students should be preparing for the standardized test and when they should take them. And I think I heard you say prepare as a sophomore, do it once as a junior, and then spend your senior year working on all the other parts of the application and admission process. Is it common that you would that your clients or the students you're working with really just do this exam once they're totally prepared?
Yeah, I mean, that's just the most common scenario. It happens about 60% of the time. And then there's another 30% that need to take it a second time, which they can either do later junior year or in the fall of senior year. But we try to keep it really to a minimum, anybody doing it 3 times. A lot of people do it 3 times, but that's really not ideal. It consumes a lot of time that could be used for essays and recommendations and extracurriculars. And it can be a blow to a student's confidence, and so we really try to get it done once right. Sometimes, a student gets nervous or whatnot, and they need to do it a second time, and that's fine. But that's really the best case.
You mentioned that the ACT has a science component, but other than that difference, how do you direct students to do one or the other? And do you direct them to only do one of the tests as opposed to both?
Yeah, so typically, we'll have them do diagnostic tests of both and see how they do. And then we'll have a judgment call. Is it pretty clear that one is definitely playing to their strengths? And if that's the case, then we'll just pursue that one test. It does take a little bit of extra prep time if they're going to do both, but sometimes if it's unclear from a diagnostic or even a couple of diagnostic which ones will play to their strengths, then we'll have them do both tests. But in most cases, it's pretty clear, and we're able to determine pretty early in the preparation which tests will be better suited for their specific background and interests and academic experiences.
Let's talk a little bit about the options that are available. I know that you do actually in-person training back in New York, but for students that are out here in California, and I know you do online training or you do online preparation work with students. So can you talk first of all in general of what's available in the marketplace in this area, and then talk about what Stratus Prep, how you guys work, how you would work with students if there's any listeners today who are saying, hey, I want to learn a little bit more about you.
Yeah, absolutely. So, there's every variety of online offerings, and you have to be, again, careful there to make sure that you're really, spending your money in a value-added way. There are iPhone apps with vocab, words, and, there's online tutorials that you can watch, some of which are free, some of which you pay for. But a lot of them are not really by test prep experts who really understand, hey, what words are really going to be on the test, or sometimes the explanations are convoluted or incomplete to math problems. And so, there are these on-demand, watch it when you want, do it when you want alternatives, some of which are all right, many of which are folks just trying to, make a quick couple of bucks. And so you want to be careful with that. What we do at Stratus Prep is we do only live one-on-one virtual tutoring. And so what that means is the student and the tutor are seeing each other live, because that's very important to us. We want to be able to see the student, because you can see from facial expressions if they're getting frustrated, if they don't really understand a concept, even if they say that they do. And then we have a digital blackboard. So everything that the tutor is writing on that digital blackboard, the student is seeing live. And the great thing about the digital blackboard is it captures everything, and the student has their own login, and in between tutoring sessions, the student can go in and he or she can review the notes from the last tutoring session or a couple of tutoring sessions back, or if he or she forgets a formula or how to do a certain problem, can just log in and review that. And so what we find is that students who work online actually sort of make progress a little bit more quickly, because they're not frantically trying to take notes. They're really focused in on learning the material. So that's been our approach. It's been enormously successful. In fact, many students in New York, because of the convenience of online test prep and being able to do it, anytime, pretty much, in the evenings or on the weekends, they're doing it from their homes, even in New York, because they like the component of the digital blackboard. And we also do college admissions counseling, and that we do virtually all over the world as well, helping with the essays and the recommendations and everything like that, that other important piece of the process.
So for any student, so it's not uncommon then that a student would do some prep work with you and also work with you on the college counseling, but how many hours of prep is average? And I'm assuming it's different for every student, but maybe it isn't. You tell me.
Yeah, no, I mean, I would say that about 30 hours of tutoring is probably the average. Some folks come in, they test very high on a diagnostic. They may only need 20 hours of tutoring. Other folks, they may need 50 or 100 hours of tutoring depending on, where they're starting and where they want to end up. I've seen some really driven students who were not naturally good test takers but have gotten into great universities by really mastering these tests through a lot of effort and collaboration with their tutor.
The other thing that I mentioned a little bit briefly at the beginning of this show was this idea that, do you have examples or do you believe that this better test score not only will help you get into the school, but really could reduce your cost of college?
Yeah, absolutely. So let me tell you about a student, Chris, who worked with us this last year. And so he worked with us on both ACT prep as well as college admissions counseling. So the family, they invested maybe in total he needed a fair amount of prep and then a good amount of college counseling. So maybe in total about $10,000. And he ended up getting into NYU. He got into Northwestern. At both of those schools, he had about $100,000 scholarship. In total, he had well over $300,000 in scholarships. So not only did he get into a much better school than he would have otherwise without the prep, but with the combination of the prep and the admissions counseling, the family, even net of our fees, is saving, well north of, $75,000 or $80,000, or $90,000. So, there's a lot of money available out there. But as you know, Beatrice, you need to know how to find it, and you need to be as qualified as possible, to get that funding because, the schools have sources of funding. There are outside sources of funding. There's, a lot of merit-based and need-based funding. And so especially for those folks who are just a little bit, the family may just be a little bit too high for the need-based grants, but really do need some alternative sources of funding because they don't want to take out enormous amounts of loans. They're willing to, of course, take out some. That's the perfect place to invest in test prep and admissions counseling because, you're going to hopefully end up saving well north of $100,000 and not investing, even a tenth of that along the way.
And that's true even not only for the Ivy League top schools, which I know you've had a lot of experience with some of your students, but even with those mid-level, if we want to call that, or the smaller private colleges, they absolutely have a lot of merit aid. And so just a little bit of a higher mark on your SAT or ACT can really make a difference. Hard to measure the dollar amount exactly, but oftentimes those merit scholarships are $10,000, $15,000 a year. So over 4 years, and the fact that you don't have to take the loan out, it can make a huge difference.
We have students every year who go to Harvard and Yale, but we also have students who aren't targeting Harvard and Yale. That's just it's either not what they want, or given their GPA, it's not in their future, and they are targeting sort of those mid-tier schools, as you said. And we work just as hard and we're just as successful at helping them get merit-based aid. So that is something that it's so important for parents to be aware of.
Hey, Shawn, we've only got about a minute, but can you just share with our listeners how they can find out a little bit more about Stratus Prep?
Yeah, so you can go ahead and visit us at stratusprep.com or email us at info@stratusprep.com or give us a call at area code 212-307-1788. So again, it's Stratus, STRATUS, prep.com. And we would be happy to do a free consultation with any of your listeners to, sort of talk about, where they and their children are in this process and make sure that they are best prepared. And one thing that you and I have spoken about offline is, it's really never too early to get started. We have a lot of freshmen, especially on the college admissions side, who get started with us because in terms of getting into the right extracurriculars and getting tracked into the right classes for APs and everything like that, it's so important to start early. And we sort of structure our prep so that it's both financially and academically advantageous to start sooner rather than later. Well,
thanks so much for joining us, Shawn. We really appreciate that you joined us on College Smart Radio today.
Thank you. It was great to be with you.
So a link to the stratusprep.com website will be on our College Smart Radio website also. Well, that wraps up another College Smart Radio program. We hope you picked up some new information today that helps you figure out ways to manage the runaway costs of college. For a link to a podcast of this show and all our prior shows, go to our website, collegesmartradio.com. This is Beatrice Schultz. Thanks for joining us on College Smart Radio.
You've been listening to College Smart Radio with Mark Guthrie and Beatrice Schultz. If you have questions on today's topic, log on to collegesmartradio.com or call area code 650-587-1559. That's 650-587-1559. And join us next week at this time for another edition of College Smart Radio on AM 1220 KDOW.
Information presented during today's show is not to be construed as advice meeting the particular needs of any investor. All mention of performance is based on historical experience. It should not be assumed that past performance is any indication of future results. Tax and or legal advice is not offered by Mark Guthrie or Beatrice Schultz. Please consult your tax professional for additional guidance regarding tax-related matters. Mark Guthrie and Beatrice Schultz are owners and investor advisor representatives of Westface Financial Advisory. College planning services offered through Westface College Planning. Insurance services offered through Westface Financial and Insurance Services. License number OF 35251. Financial planning and investment advisory services offered through Westface Financial Advisory.